You are not a party to it. Enslaved by consent. The United States Constitution. If you are one of the 99% that are made up of the individual, private people, you are not a party to the United States Constitution. I am going to present to you here the proof in black ink on white paper that will back up and support everything I say here. All the documented proof will be attached at the end for your reference as evidence. First and foremost, I am going to point out what is, in my opinion, the mother case of all cases. This case was before the Declaration of Independence and before all the founding documents were written. This is a 1772 case, and the site quoted in this case was from George Mason. One of the things the Supreme Court relies on when deciding constitutional issues is the writings by the founders in order to determine the meaning of what their intent was when the court must decide on the meaning of the Constitution. When you discover who George Mason was, you will learn he was one of the founders who took part in the Constitutional Convention, but about 2 weeks before the signing of the Constitution, he refused to sign it. His writings have been used as a model for other founders, such as Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson used Mason's writings as a model to write the Declaration of Independence. I believe this to be very important because of who George Mason was. There is no judge in any court that could dispute what George Mason said in this case. Robin versus Hardaway. Now, all acts of legislature apparently contrary to natural right and justice are, in our laws, and must be in the nature of things, considered as void. The laws of nature are the laws of God, whose authority can be superseded by no power on earth. A legislature must not obstruct our obedience to him, from whose punishments they cannot protect us. All human constitutions which contradict his laws, we are in conscience bound to disobey. Such have been the adjudications of our courts of justice. And cited 8 Company 118. A. Bonham's case. Hobb. 87. 7 Company 14. A. Calvin's case. Right there it says plain as day that acts of the legislature contrary to God's law must be considered as void. In other words, God's law is the superior law and trumps any man-made laws. Entire text of this case is attached below. 13 pages. The next issue is we must determine exactly what is God's law. Where do we get the source of this law that can be used to bind any court to have to accept as God's law? That source comes from the Bible. And by an act of Congress, they confirm that the Bible is the Word of God. Public Law 97-280, Act 4, 1982, 96 Stat. 1211. Public Law 97-280. 97th Congress. Joint Resolution. Authorizing and requesting the President to proclaim 1983 as the Year of the Bible. Whereas the Bible, the Word of God, has made a unique contribution in shaping the United States as a distinctive and blessed nation and people. On February 3, 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed Proclamation 5018, Year of the Bible. This public law is found in the statutes at large, and a copy of the proclamation signed by Ronald Reagan is attached below. 5 pages total. So now we have the 1772 Robin versus Hardaway case that clearly states God's law is the superior law, and any man-made law contrary to God's law must be considered as void. Then we have an act of Congress signed by proclamation by President Ronald Reagan, confirming that the Bible is the Word of God, which is the source to find what all of God's laws are. The next thing I want you to think about is to go back when the founders signed the Declaration of Independence. At that moment in time when the founders signed the Declaration of Independence, and when the war with the British ended, did we have a government in place at that moment in time? The answer is no, we did not. Did the king not free all his subjects that were here and make every single man and woman a free person? Yes, he did. So at that moment in time, man was free and became his own individual sovereign king. As a sovereign king over yourself, no other man has any authority to make any law over you, nor does he have any authority to rule over you. Think about that. Could you walk into Walmart and make rules and laws over some stranger, such as an employee working there, where they would become bound and subject to whatever rules and laws you decided to make over them? Of course not. So by what authority does any man have over another man to be able to do that? There is none. They have no authority. When the founders got together and decided to form a government, And when they signed on to a new constitution, did you ever sign on to that? Where is your contract that you made with them and that you signed to become a party to their government? There is none. It does not exist. Here is a case that proves you are not a party to the United States Constitution. Paddleford, Fay and Company v. Mayor and Alderman of City of Savannah, 1854. Asterisk 55, but, indeed, no private person has a right to complain by suit in court on the ground of a breach of the Constitution. The Constitution, it is true, is a compact, but he is not a party to it. The states are the parties to it, and they may complain. There it is right there in black and white. The court has clearly stated that you are a private person, and that no private person has a right to complain by suit in court on the ground of A. Breach of the Constitution, because you are not a party to it. The states are the parties to it, and only they may complain. Entire text of this case is attached below. 61 pages. You may be thinking now, yeah, but the Constitution says, we the people, so that means us, and that we are the ones that granted that to the government to be formed. You think? Well, let's take a look at what the people means. Bouvier's Law Dictionary. People. A nation in its collective and political capacity. In neutrality laws, a government recognized by the United States. When the term the people is made use of in constitutional law or discussions, it is often the case that those only are intended who have a share in the government through being clothed with the elective franchise. So based on their legal definition of people, it means those who are intended who have a share in the government through being clothed with the elective franchise. So who exactly would the elective franchise be? It isn't you and it isn't me. Not unless you are an elected official of that franchise. What does franchise mean, anyway? Let's take a look. Bouvier's Law Dictionary. Franchise. A special privilege conferred by government on individuals, and which does not belong to the citizens of the country generally by common right. Wow! So the federal government and the 50 states are all a part of a government franchise made up of private individuals who personally signed on to it, and who later become members and parties to it by becoming elected officials. Looks like a mighty fine private club they have created for themselves, doesn't it? No wonder all oaths come under CFR 22, Foreign Relations, where upon their oath to office they relinquish their citizenship. They have agreed by their own consent to join the club and become one of its members and abandon their current citizenship to do so. Look up and read Title 5 USC, Section 3331, Oath of Office. State officials are also required to meet this same obligation, according to state constitutions and state statutory law. All oaths of office come under 22 CFR, Foreign Relations, sections 92.12 through 92.30, and all who hold public office come under Title 8 USC, section 1481. Loss of nationality by native-born or naturalized citizen. Voluntary action. Burden of proof. Presumptions. Under Title 22 USC, Foreign Relations and Intercourse, section 611, a public official is considered a foreign agent. Now let's take a closer look at that preamble to the United States Constitution. Preamble. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. We the people of the United States. The people of what? The United States. What is the United States? It is a foreign corporation within a 10 square mile outside the jurisdiction of the territory that makes up the rest of the land throughout America. Next it says, in order to form a more perfect union. Form a union between who? The delegates from the 13 colonies. They wanted to get together and form their own union. The United States Incorporated, and by creating a corporate entity known as the State of XXXX, that was created within the boundaries of their colonies, together as separate subcorporate states. Next it says, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Establish, ensure, provide, promote, and secure for ourselves. Who is ourselves? Why, that can only be the delegates that got together to form themselves a more perfect union between themselves, and they are the only ones that ever signed onto the contract known as the Constitution for the United States Incorporated. A foreign corporate entity formed and created within a 10 square mile, known today as the District of Columbia. A 10 square mile foreign territory of land. This is outside the boundaries of America. Next it says, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Who ordained and established that Constitution? They did. The delegates. They got together and decided to form a more perfect union for themselves, between themselves, for their justice, tranquility, common defense, general welfare, securing their blessings of liberty to themselves and their posterity. The United States of America is the 50 corporate states they created as foreign corporate entities which are all outside the boundaries of the territory not owned by the corporate government, known as the United States Incorporated. For a corporate state to become a state of their union, it must be admitted into their union by Congress. The individual 50 corporate states did not become states on their own by their own doing. By the people within the boundaries of that territory the corporate state was created and formed by. They were created and formed by the members of the state that created it and admitted to the foreign entity known as the United States Incorporated, approved by the Congress of that foreign entity to join their union. The 50 corporate states are all foreign territory restricted to federal land only. This you can discover by reading all the organic laws. The organic laws are: Articles of Confederation, 1777. The Declaration of Independence, 1776. The Ordinance of 1787, the Northwest Territorial Government. Constitution of the United States of America, 1787. These organic laws have never been repealed and still remain valid and are still in effect today. You can find the evidence of this by going to the government printing office and ordering their book published for Title I through Title V of the U.S. Code. These laws are still published as law by the government. For more information on this subject, visit Ed Rivera's website at www.edrivera.com. Ed Rivera is an attorney who has spent an enormous amount of time and research on this and offers classes for anyone wanting to learn about the law. In the words of the late George Carlin, it's a private club, folks, and you ain't in it. Can you now see why judges threaten you with contempt if you bring up this Constitution in their courts again? It is because it does not apply to you, because you are not a party to it. If you are not a party to it, then you cannot complain about it. And if they're telling you that you cannot complain about it for a breach of it, then that means it can't apply to you either. Every single law, code, statute, regulation, public policy, ECT, all stems from the Constitution. It all started from that one document. So if you are not a party to the Constitution, then you are not a party to the state of XXXXX Incorporated, because the corporate states were formed by the United States Incorporated, by having to be admitted into their union to become a subcorp state of their union. And all laws, codes, statutes, regulations, and public policies of the individual subcorp states do not apply to you because you are not a party to the Constitution of the United States Incorporated. It's all a private club that only elected officials of the mothership corp known as the United States Incorporated and all the subcorp, state of XXXX, Incs. Are parties to it. Do you now see why they must always have your consent? You have to volunteer yourself to become subject to it. And even when you volunteer yourself to become subject to it, you still have no right to complain because merely volunteering to subject yourself to it does not make you a party to it. It only enslaves you to it where you become chattel property of their corporate empire. And what did they do to sneak around this little problem so as to trick and deceive you into getting you to consent and volunteer? They created their own fictional legal persons where they would have a separate legal person created for every man, woman, and child, where they would use their same Christian name and add their family name to it and create an entirely separate new name comprised of a first, middle, and last name. which is a fiction created by the state that the state birthed into existence by creating a legal document to create a legal title for that name, known as the birth certificate. Meanwhile, all the free, private people outside their private club who are not a party to it, left to believe they are that fictional name they created so they can freely consent to being subject to all the laws, codes, statutes, regulations, and public policies, all through their own individual ignorance of not knowing who they are and what they have done to deceive and trick them into freely consenting. Isn't that what is required of Satan to own your soul? Doesn't Satan have to get your consent in order to get your soul? Isn't the elite behind all this government creation Satan worshippers? They all sold their souls to Satan so they can have their power and wealth over the masses. And the Satan worshippers have designed a scheme to trick and deceive you in order to get you to give your consent to sell them your soul through consenting to become a member of their satanic club by accepting to claim their name they created for you through the birth certificate. 1599 Geneva Bible. Revelation 13 verse 17. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. What does every man, woman, and child need in order to buy or sell? They have to have a legal name that consists of a first and last name. Man never had last names. They had Christian names, which was a first name and could have a middle name. There was no last name. They were known by first names and being from the family of name and or from the tribe of. If you search through the Bible, everyone only has a first name. They are called by a first name and referred to by being from the family of XXXXX, or being from the tribe of XXXXX, or being from the family of XXXXX, from the tribe of XXXXX. There are no last names. For many years, some have felt the SS number was the mark, and some feel it will be the microchip. But what is the one thing every man, woman, and child has now that they must have just to be able to buy or sell within their system they created? The fictional legal name that was created by a birth certificate. So could the name actually be the mark? And what better deception to use than a fictional name created by the state that just happens to look the same as your given Christian name and adding your family name to that in order to create the illusion that is your name when it is not. And because of our ignorance of not knowing what names are and their meanings, we have all been easily deceived into freely accepting and consenting to it all, where we have accepted and taken the mark. So who exactly are we and where exactly do we get our rights? 1599 Geneva Bible. Genesis 26. In the Bible, Book of Genesis 1 verses 26 to 30, to wit. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, "Be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth." And God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat." And it was so. God made us in his image and in his likeness, and he gave us dominion over this earth and all things in and on this earth. These are your natural rights granted to you by your Creator, which no other man on earth can take away from you, unless you freely consent and volunteer to give up your God-given rights to become a subject to another man's laws. Do you consent? Do you freely volunteer? We all have been consenting and volunteering because of ignorance. 1599 Geneva Bible. Hosea 4 verse 6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast refused knowledge. I will also refuse thee that thou shalt be no priest to me. And seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. Well, that certainly says a lot right there, doesn't it? We have all obviously forgotten who we are, what our real rights are, where that authority comes from, And through ignorance from our lack of knowledge, we have allowed ourselves to become deceived by freely volunteering and consenting to be subject to all the laws, codes, statutes, regulations, and public policies that only pertain to a private club of a few that is made up of a mother corporation known as a senior corporation known as the United States, Inc., and all its sub-corporations of the 50 state of XXXX, Incs., none of which you, as a private person, are a party to. And those corporations are under the bigger world corporations, such as private banking cartels out of London, the Queen, and the Vatican. The most deceptive part of all this is that the elite behind these corporate powers worship Satan and represent evil, where in order for them to steal your souls and renounce your allegiance to your Creator, they must get you to freely volunteer yourself by consent to become a subject of their evil empire. And we all have done this because of our own ignorance by allowing ourselves to be dumbed down generation after generation. They have used their media sources to feed us with. They have used their powers to enslave us and take our wealth away and force us into working longer hours, forcing our women to have to work just to make ends meet, and while at the same time leaving us with no free time to learn anything and know the truth. Where our most common source of information fed to us comes from their controlled media outlets, such as newspapers, television, radio, etc. We have been duped and we have taken their bait hook, line, and sinker. Everything you ever acquire, you are acquiring it all on behalf of the state, where all property is being vested in the state where you have nothing. Senate Doc number 43, page 9, second paragraph in the right column. The ultimate ownership of all property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government, i.e., law, amounting to mere user, and use must be in accordance with law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. Copy attached below. Congressional Record, House, March 9, 1933. The money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar because it is backed by the credit of the nation. It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation. The money so issued will not have 1 penny of gold coverage behind it, because it is really not needed. We do not need gold to back our internal currency. Copy attached below. They are using internal currency, and everything you acquire is vested in the state and becomes a mortgage on all property acquired. How can this be? How can they do that? They do it through the legal name created by the states with their creation of the birth certificate. They create a legal name that the state holds the legal title to, birth certificate, and then they issue you a certificate called Certificate of Live Birth. That certificate represents the legal name the state created. You then go out into the world and conduct all your business under the use of that legal name the state created. You thought that was your name, but it is not. It is a fictional name that was created by the state, in which the state holds the legal title to it. When you were born, you were given what is known as a Christian name. The Christian name consists only of a first name and could include a middle name. There is no last name. What you refer to as a last name is the family name that you were born of. The name the state created does have a last name. All corporate entities must have a last name, which you can find under Delaware legislation. DEL Code Title 8 Chapter 6 Section 617, Delaware Code, Section 617, Corporate Name. The corporate name of a corporation organized under this chapter shall contain either a word or words descriptive of the professional service to be rendered by the corporation, or shall contain the last names of one or more of its present, prospective or former shareholders, or of persons who were associated with a predecessor person, partnership, corporation, or other organization, or whose name or names appeared in the name of such predecessor organization. Texas Administrative Code. Subject 1 TC Section 79.31 Corporations, Entity Names. Section 79.31 Characters of print acceptable in names. Entity names may consist of letters of the Roman alphabet, Arabic numerals, and certain symbols capable of being reproduced on a standard English language typewriter or combination thereof. Only uppercase or capital letters, with no distinction as to typeface or font, will be recognized. Delaware Legislation, March 10, 1899. An act providing general corporate law, This act allowed the corporation to become a person. As per their internal laws, corporations are required to have last names, and under their laws they have allowed corporations to become a person. Under the Texas Code, all corporate names are to be in all capital letters. Look at your mail, such as your credit card bills, utility bills, your checks, etc., and you will notice the name is most often spelled in all capital letters. There is no proper grammar or spelling to allow proper names to be spelled in all capital letters. These spellings, along with the fact they include a last name, all represent a fictional entity and not the proper name of a man or woman. The state takes the same Christian name you were given at birth, then they take your same family name you were born of, and they put those names together to create a new fictional name that is the legal person. For example, a proper Christian name would look like this: John Doe of the family Smith. The fictional name the state created would look like this: John Doe Smith or John Doe Smith. As you can see, they look close to the same, but they're in fact two complete separate and different names. One is the name used by man, and one is a fictitious name that pertains to a fictional entity that the state created and is called the legal person. Some people believe because the name appears to be the same and because the mother signed the birth certificate as informant that this makes the parents a grantor to this name and gives us the rights to this name where we could somehow go back and reclaim it. I do not agree with that theory. The names are not the same. They are two complete different and separate names from each other. And anyone can choose to take any name they want even though others may already be using that name. Otherwise, there could never be more than one John Smith. But there are thousands of John Smiths out there. And even though you may be known as John Doe of the family Smith, that is not the same name as John Doe Smith or John Doe Smith created by the state. They are as different and separate from each other as is a green apple and a red apple are different from one another. They are both apples, but they're not the same apples. As you go through life and use that legal name the state has created, and in which they have issued you a certificate of that name they created, everything you acquire under that name is being acquired on behalf of the state. It is no different than, say, where you form a corporation and you go acquire property under that corporate name. The property is vested in the corporation. You do not have any interest in that property personally. But as an officer of that corporation, you do have use and control of that property. You hold the interest in the corporation through the legal document that makes up the corporation. The state holds legal title to that name. So everything you acquire under that name becomes automatically vested in the state. Plus, you are using their internal currency to acquire everything with. You use their internal currency that is backed by nothing, and you acquire everything under their name that they created that the state holds the legal title to. Birth certificate. Since you are in possession of a certificate bearing that legal name that the state issued to you, you are just a beneficiary of everything pertaining to that name. You have no other interest in that name other than being a gift recipient of the certificate issued by the state and all property acquired by you under that name. As a beneficiary and nothing more, you cannot be liable for anything that pertains to that name. It is the same with any other type of legal entity such as trusts, corporations, LLCs, etc. When a trust, corporation, or LLC is sued for something, where the suit is naming that entity as the party being sued, it is the assets held by that entity that is subject to being taken. You as just an officer or president of that entity are not personally liable unless you sign to be held personally liable. It is the same thing pertaining to the name. That is a legal entity created by the state and in which the state holds the legal title to. So any charges ever brought against John Doe Smith or John Doe Smith is being brought against that fictional entity. They are not charges being brought against you, John Doe of the family Smith, the living flesh and blood man. So you cannot be personally liable for anything pertaining to the legal name John Doe Smith or John Doe Smith, because you are not John Doe Smith nor John Doe Smith, and you do not hold or own any interest in the fictional entity, John Doe Smith or John Doe Smith. You are known as just John Doe, who was born of the family known as Smith, who is not a fictional entity, but in fact you are a flesh and blood living man who is created in your Creator's image and granted dominion over everything on this earth, meaning you have use and control over anything you currently are in possession of. You are nothing more than just a beneficiary to that legal name, and as just a beneficiary, you cannot be held liable for anything that is brought against that name, unless you freely volunteer yourself through your personal consent to be treated and regarded as if you are that fictional name. So how are they getting away with holding you, the man known as John Doe, who was born of the family Smith, a flesh and blood living man? They get away with it because of our own ignorance every time we make a false claim by claiming we are John Doe Smith or John Doe Smith. You walk into a court, and what is the very first thing they do? They call out John Doe Smith. Then John Doe, born of the family Smith, the real man, stands up and approaches the court and says, "Here." The very next thing that happens is the judge asks you, "Are you John Doe Smith?" And then John Doe, who is born of the family Smith, the real man, says, "Yes, I am." At that point, the man has just perjured himself in court, making a false claim and self-incriminated himself in the process. And because you are a man and you are your own sovereign king over yourself, only you can say who you are. The court has no authority to dispute your claim of you claiming to be who you say you are. And they can't prove otherwise. So having no evidence to prove otherwise, and no desire to anyway, and there being no one in the court to object to the false claim you just made, the court merely accepts your claim of being John Doe Smith. Since you made the claim to being John Doe Smith, the court can now hold you liable for the charges that were brought against John Doe Smith, the fictional entity created by the state, known as the legal person. Even though they know you are not the fictional legal person, John Doe Smith, they have no authority to question your authority as a sovereign king over yourself, and they have to accept your claim, even though it was a false claim. Do you see now how we are our own worst enemy because of our own lack of knowledge? My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast refused knowledge. I will also refuse thee that thou shalt be no priest to me. And seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. You walk into their temple of justice that you are not even a party to, and you freely volunteer yourself by consenting to be John Doe Smith. You claimed a name that is just a legal fiction that was created and owned by the state, in which the state holds the legal title to. Is that insane, or what? Is it any wonder you are deemed incompetent and everyone needs a lawyer? Then the lawyer can at least try to limit your damages by trying to at least get your costs down or sentence reduced. Or in some cases might even get you off because of some technicality over their own private internal laws, rules, or procedures. The same thing happens by claiming ownership of some piece of property you do not own, but you think you own it because of ignorance. For one, your creator did not give you ownership of anything. He gave you dominion. Dominion means use and control. You have the right to use and control any property in your possession that you acquired without having taken it from someone else that was already using it, but you have no right to own it. And since you acquired possession of all property by acquiring it with the name the state holds title to, you have acquired it under the name held by the state, and you used their internal currency to acquire it with. So you can't possibly claim ownership of it. You create a controversy by doing so. By you creating the controversy, which is by your claiming to own the property, and also claiming to own it by claiming to be John Doe Smith, is it any wonder they want to lock you up and or fine you? Is it any wonder why they declared us all as enemy of the state? We are constantly going into their private temples making all these false claims. It's insanity. Wouldn't the smart thing to do whenever they try to serve you with anything or issue you something that requires their name to appear in their temple, to just privately send them a notice of mistake so they can correct their records and resolve any issues they have between themselves? Since you are not John Doe Smith or John Doe Smith, why would you even go into their private temples of justice? If that ain't you, then you have no business going in there. That can only lead to getting yourself into trouble you don't need. You can't go in there and start arguing their own internal club membership laws and rules when they don't even apply to you. So why even bother? It doesn't pertain to you. That ain't you. If property is the issue, that property ain't yours. It isn't in your name. It is in their name. You are only a beneficiary who is exercising his rights granted to you by your creator, which clearly states you have dominion over it. So why should you care whatever their internal disputes and issues are pertaining to a name that is a fictional entity that they hold the legal title to? Send the court a private communication to notify them of their mistake. They are trying to serve their papers on you, the man. It is a mistake. Hasn't their own court already established the fact that their man-made laws that contradict with God's laws, they are to consider their own man-made laws as being void? Sure they did. Let's look again. Robin versus Hardaway. Now all acts of legislature apparently contrary to natural right and justice are, in our laws, and must be in the nature of things, considered as void. The laws of nature are the laws of God, whose authority can be superseded by no power on earth. A legislature must not obstruct our obedience to him from whose punishments they cannot protect us. All human constitutions which contradict his laws, we are in conscience bound to disobey. Such have been the adjudications of our courts of justice. And cited 8 Company 118. A. Bonham's case. Hobb. 87. 7 Company 14. A. Calvin's case. Yep, that is exactly what it says. And haven't they declared the source of God's law the Bible when Congress declared the Bible as the Word of God? Let's look again real quick. Public Law 97-280, Oct. 4, 1982, 96 Stat. 1211. Public Law 97-280. 97th Congress. Joint Resolution. Authorizing and requesting the President to proclaim 1983 as the Year of the Bible. Whereas the Bible, the Word of God, has made a unique contribution in shaping the United States as a distinctive and blessed nation and people. On February 3, 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed Proclamation 5018, Year of the Bible. Yep, that is exactly what they said. Okay. So what does God's law say as it is found and stated in the Bible? Let's take a quick peek at that again. In the Bible, Book of Genesis 1 verses 26 to 30, to wit. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them. And God said unto them, Be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon them. Face of all the earth, and every tree, in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. There it is right there. God made man in his image and gave man dominion over everything. So that appears to trump any of their man-made laws, doesn't it? And their own court has made it clear that we, the private person, is not a party to the Constitution. So if you are not a party to it, and everything within their entire system today stems from that Constitution, then that means none of that can apply to you since you are not a party to it. Paddleford, Fay and Company v. Mayor and Alderman of City of Savannah, 1854. Asterisk 55, but, indeed, no private person has a right to complain, by suit in court, on the ground of a breach of the Constitution. The Constitution, it is true, is a compact, but he is not a party to it. The states are the parties to it, and they may complain. Is there any more proof or evidence one could ask for? It is all right here as plain as day. This leaves you with only one option, and that option is you must freely consent to subject yourself to become a party to it. You are not a U.S. citizen, so stop claiming you are. That legal name is the U.S. citizen, not you. That legal name was birthed and born within their jurisdiction, not you the man. The United States is the 10 square miles within the District of Columbia. It is not the territory of all the land throughout America. Only land outside the 10 square miles of the District of Columbia is any land that is owned by the United States Incorporated, which is commonly known as the federal government. This would be areas such as federal national parks where the federal government owns that land, and areas like Puerto Rico, Guam, and Virgin Islands, etc. In order for you, the living man, to become a U.S. citizen, you must complete a 3-step process first. This is confirmed by their court case, City of Minneapolis versus Reum, 1893. The United States, in the exercise of their undoubted right, have prescribed the conditions upon compliance with which an alien may become a citizen of this nation. The Act of Congress of April 14, 1802, 2 Stat 153, c. 28, Section 1, Reverend St. Section 2165, provides that an alien may be admitted to become a citizen of the United States in the following manner, and not otherwise. First, he shall, 2 years at least prior to his admission, declare before a proper court his intention to become a citizen of the United States, and to renounce *578 his allegiance to the potentate or sovereignty of which he may be at the time a citizen or subject. Second, he shall, at the time of his application to be admitted, declare, on oath, before someone of the courts above specified, that he will support the Constitution of the United States, and that he absolutely and entirely renounces and abjures all allegiance and fidelity to every foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, and particularly, by name, to the prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty of which he was before a citizen or subject, which proceedings shall be recorded by the clerk of the court. Third, it shall be made to appear to the satisfaction of the court admitting such alien that he has resided within the United States 5 years at least, and within the state or territory where such court is at the time held 1 year at least, and that during that time he has behaved as a man of a good moral character, attached to the principles of the Constitution of the United States, and well disposed to the good order and happiness of the same, but the oath of the applicant shall in no case be allowed to prove his residence. The entire text of this case is attached below. 7 pages. Have you ever declared, before a court, your admission to become a United States citizen and renounce your allegiance and sovereignty to your Creator? Have you admitted an application, declared, on oath, before someone of the court specified, that you will support the Constitution of the United States, and that you absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to your Creator, that you were subject to at birth? Has it been made to appear to the court that you have resided within the United States 5 years at least, and within their federal zone states or territory as a man of good moral character, attached to the principles of the Constitution of the United States? Unless you, as a living man, have completed all of those steps, you cannot be a U.S. citizen. And why would anyone want to give up their allegiance to their Creator and all the God-given rights the Creator has granted to you, just to become a member to a private club known as the United States, Inc. and its 50 states? Inc.'s just become their chattel property, subjecting yourself to over 6 million laws they have created on their internal books and to a group of elite that worship Satan. Isn't Satan required to get your consent in order to take your soul? Since the elite that are behind this empire that controls all these corporate entities are people that appear to worship Satan, could it be they are using this deception they created to get you, the living man, to freely volunteer your soul to Satan by getting your consent, where you freely consent yourself to be presumed to be that fictional entity, the legal person, created by the state through what is commonly known as the birth certificate? You would have to give up your allegiance to God, and that is all that God wanted. If you became a United States citizen, you have to give up your allegiance to God. How can you be a U.S. citizen and a Christian at the same time? It's an impossibility in law. 1599 Geneva Bible. Revelation 13 verse 17. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Are we selling our souls by accepting the name and subjecting ourselves to their private system that is controlled by Satan worshippers? Could the name they created be the mark of the beast? Isn't the name always in our head because that is the name we know more than anything? And we use our hand to sign that name, which assign the name to everything? Isn't it true you can't do anything without that name? Would a bank let you open an account with just your Christian name, which is just your first and middle name, and without listing a last name? Could you get hired by a company doing the same by filling out an employment application to get a job? Could you get a driver's license, social security card, passport, or any government form issued by a government agency using only your Christian name? I doubt it. 1599 Geneva Bible. Revelation 13:16. And he made all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. Is that legal fictional name you have been misled to believe all your life not a name that has been drilled into your head? And have you not used your hand to sign that name to everything requiring you to give a name on? When Obama stated we are no longer a Christian nation, could he have known what he was talking about? If everyone claims to be a U.S. citizen and the only way to become a U.S. citizen is to have to renounce your allegiance to your creator, then could Obama have been correct when he made that statement? I'll leave it up to you to decide. I've attached the documents below to provide the black ink on white paper that supports these findings. I am, also known as John. Documents attached below. Statutes at Large 1982. Proclamation 5018, Year of the Bible, 1983. Senate, Doc. 43. Congressional Record, March 9-1933. 1599, Geneva Bible, Genesis 1-26. Revelation 13-16-17. Hosea 4-6. Robin vs. Hardaway. George Mason, Background History. Paddleford, Fay and Company v. Mayor and Alderman of City of Savannah. City of Minneapolis vs. Riem. By the President of the United States of America. A proclamation. Of the many influences that have shaped the United States of America into a distinctive nation and people, none may be said to be more fundamental and enduring than the Bible. Deep religious beliefs stemming from the Old and New Testaments of the Bible inspired many of the early settlers of our country, providing them with the strength, character, convictions, and faith necessary to withstand great hardship and danger in this new and rugged land. These shared beliefs helped forge a sense of common purpose among the widely dispersed colonies, a sense of community which laid the foundation for the spirit of nationhood that was to develop in later decades. The Bible and its teachings helped form the basis for the founding fathers' abiding belief in the inalienable rights of the individual, rights which they found implicit in the Bible's teachings of the inherent worth and dignity of each individual. This same sense of man patterned the convictions of those who framed the English system of law inherited by our own nation, as well as the ideals set forth in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. For centuries, the Bible's emphasis on compassion and love for our neighbor has inspired institutional and governmental expressions of benevolent outreach such as private charity, the establishment of schools and hospitals, and the abolition of slavery. Many of our greatest national leaders, among them Presidents Washington, Jackson, Lincoln, and Wilson, have recognized the influence of the Bible on our country's development. The plain-spoken Andrew Jackson referred to the Bible as no less than the rock on which our republic rests. Today, our beloved America, and indeed the world, is facing a decade of enormous challenge. As a people, we may well be tested as we have seldom, if ever, been tested before. We will need resources of spirit even more than resources of technology, education, and armaments. There could be no more fitting moment than now to reflect with gratitude, humility, and urgency upon the wisdom revealed to us in the writing that Abraham Lincoln called the best gift God has ever given to man. But for it we could not know right from wrong. The Congress of the United States, in recognition of the unique contribution of the Bible in shaping the history and character of this nation and so many of its citizens, has by Senate Joint Resolution 165 authorized and requested the President to designate the year 1983 as the Year of the Bible. Now, therefore, I, Ronald Reagan, President of the United States of America, in recognition of the contributions and influence of the Bible on our republic and our people, do hereby proclaim 1983 the Year of the Bible in the United States. I encourage all citizens, each in his or her own way, to re-examine and rediscover its priceless and timeless message. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 3rd day of February, in the year of our Lord 1983, and of the independence of the United States of America the 207th. Ronald Reagan. Citation: Ronald Reagan. Proclamation 5018. Year of the Bible, 1983. February 3rd, 1983. Online by Gerhard Peters and John T. Woolley. The American Presidency Project. Aged. Read more at the American Presidency Project.